Remember when you're in school, you have an assignment due the next morning, but you hadn't even started it yet. You very quickly throw something together at the last minute and hope to hell you get a passing grade. That's what this episode felt like. A last-minute disaster on the level of Plan 9 from outer space. Actually, scratch that. Plan 9 is actually fun to watch. Chibnall has spent so much time demonstrating how superior and woke he is that he forgot to pay attention to anything else. Probably because, in theory anyway, he sucks at doing anything else. We start in a garbage dump, which seems quite fitting for this episode and series, where the Doctor is looking for whatever, maybe a plot. Then they find this mind thing, and wackiness ensues, and then they get transported to plot device medical ship. Too bad the mind didn't trigger regeneration. Chibnall thinks tricking us into not believing it's a ship in the beginning is somehow clever. Then the Doctor becomes obsessed with turning the ship around to get the TARDIS. I don't remember other Doctors becoming this manic over losing the TARDIS, which happened a lot. Then she changes her mind when male nurse dude makes her realize she's being an asshole. Then something penetrates the hull. I guess Chibnall decided something needed to happen. Then male nurse dude gets jettisoned and we get introduced to... I almost don't have the words. Maybe the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in Doctor Who. That's the second week in a row I've said that. We get introduced to stupid CGI eat stuff monster. Chibnall, this is the type of thing I'd expect a 5-year-old to come up with. When Pating, really Chibnall, that's the name you came up with, first graced my TV screen, I thought I was suddenly watching a cheap comedy or a parody. Actually, that's what this series is. A parody of what would happen if NPCs managed to get full control of Doctor Who. Kind of like a nightmare, but then you realize you're awake. Then you just get really depressed. The CGI gremlin monster is something that you'd expect to see in 1999, not 2018, and it still would have been crap. Chibnall decided to get rid of all classic Doctor Who villains, and this was what he came up with. You really have no idea what you're doing, do you? The BBC diversity and inclusion strategy was of course on full display again, because to hell with those evil bastard straight white males. We had Graham, that emotionless and stupid android, and Pregnant Man. Let's talk about Pregnant Man for a minute. I'm sure Chibnall thought this was absolutely hilarious, or perhaps genius. I don't even think he knew where he was going with this. Whatever he was trying to do, the character was just annoying and quite unfunny. This was probably for some kind of political message. Maybe boys wanting to be like girls. No NPCs, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I would just not rather have it plastered all over my entertainment. Then it turns into this whole lecture piece about absent fathers and raising kids that you're completely incapable of raising. Whatever. It was just painful to watch. Back to casting and the diversity and inclusion strategy. Sorry, I got distracted there for a minute by anger. I think this might be some of the worst acting I've seen in New Who. The guest cast, all of them absolutely sucked. If you're going to cast by category, then could you please ensure that the people you are casting can actually act? This is a fundamental problem with category casting. If you limit yourself by cutting out a significant proportion of the population because they are evil and privileged or something, then you've basically dug yourself into a nice big hole. You run the risk of casting a bunch of people that are mediocre to terrible actors. But I don't think the terrible acting was solely a consequence of the diversity and inclusion strategy, because even the white dudes in this episode were terrible. Jodie Whittaker's performance still seems to get worse with each passing episode. The first thing we hear in the garbage dump is her voice, and it made me wince. Her acting in this episode is by far the worst we've had yet, almost to the point of being humorous. She gets more and more over the top with each passing episode. Gender aside, this actor is not suited to play the Doctor. But then, I say this every week, but my god is she not suited for this role. This Doctor also seems to be somewhat more self-obsessed than previous versions, and seems to like to talk about herself a lot when referencing stuff like her volume in the Book of Celebrants. 13 just seems to come off as pompous. Perhaps it's the actor channeling herself. And please stop stretching your arm out every time you use the sonic screwdriver. And again, with the facial expressions. And what was with the constant tonal changes in this episode? They were just jarring and awkward. 1 minute you're subjected to the comedy of bad CGI garbage monster or the pregnant dude, and the next the show turns into Broadchurch with talk of dead mothers, absent fathers, and pilot brain disease. These shifts in tone are so jarring that they make scenes that should be serious almost come off as humorous. I don't think Chibnall understands the concept of pacing. We're now at the halfway point of Series 11, and my god, I thought it was going to be bad, but I had no idea it was going to be this bad. There are two things that characterize this series: cancerous and toxic ideology, and terrible and boring scripts. They even decided to make this year's Christmas special a New Year's special because Chibnall doesn't have any ideas. Really, Chibnall? You couldn't figure out a way to make Santa a racist misogynist? He's an older straight white male after all. Or is the BBC now considering Christmas to be a bad thing because diversity? Who knows? And who really cares at this point? The overnights for this episode were down to 6.12 million. If we had to break this down, about 5.5 million were wondering what the hell they had just watched, and the rest were either trying very hard to convince themselves that it was good because they're in denial, or they were the NPC crowd and they were mad because there wasn't enough NPC stuff in this episode. What am I saying? They're always mad at everything. So I guess they were happy then. I really don't know anymore. Don't worry, NPCs. Looks like we're going to get a healthy dose of lecturing next week. I'm excited. Aren't you guys? Maybe the BBC hired Chibnall because they really do want to kill the show. I'd say New Who now has its very own season 24, but this is much worse than season 24. Watching Delta and the Bannermen on a loop seems much more appealing than this crap. Remember a decade ago, we had recently finished Series 4. Did any of you, in your wildest dreams, think that this is what the show would degenerate into a decade later? Now I'm just depressed. And that's it for today. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, and check out my other channel, Bullstrike Media, for Blu-ray and technology videos. And as always, everyone, thank you for watching, and have a great day.